Hello everyone, my name is Margaret Brownlee, and I'm going to be talking to you about the City of South Portland Human Rights Commission. To begin, I'd like to celebrate that on September 29th, 2020, the City Council passed Ordinance 3-2021 enacting the Human Rights Commission. This ordinance went into effect on October 20th. It was a unanimous vote. The members are listed here on the left, but more information can be found online at southportland.org/ourcity-boards and committees Human Rights Commission. So, for the executive summary, I'd like to give a brief overview, information about the problem, the solution, highlights, keys to success, and a few financial highlights. To begin, I'd like to talk about the importance of the Human Rights Commission and why it was formed. It was created to provide support for the people of South Portland, specifically marginalized groups, to build community, provide education and training, celebrate diversity and inclusion, and increase community engagement by reviewing policies and providing events. The problem stems from systemic racism and police brutality that are taking place across the nation. The solution is to respond to incidents of hate, bias, and discrimination by providing information, community workshops, trainings, and events. We will host monthly meetings, provide trainings and workshops, celebrations, and overall raise awareness and community engagement. Our keys to success include a public website, which I listed on the slide before, an email address, and a hotline where people can contact us with any issues that may arise. We're also partnering with the South Portland Police Department, the school board, and the planning board to ensure that success and collaboration is happening across the city. We were graciously awarded a $30,000 cap with increased funding potentially for fiscal year 2021 to help increase collaboration and awareness across the city. Why is this happening now? Many people know the answer, but some people don't actually know the full picture. NPR published a podcast in May of this year, 2020, which stated the importance of how it's been a decade of watching Black and brown people die. It's devastating, it's traumatic, and we know that this is our call to action, that now is the time to do something. We must say their name: Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice. There are so many, countless others. And we encourage you to not see this as a time of grief, but see this as a call to action. These countless murders and the systemic racism and treatment of Black and brown, Indigenous, and people of color has led to Black Lives Matter protests and rallies across the United States. Specifically here in the city of South Portland, we watched as adolescents, both young and old, came together as a community to stand for racial justice. And that is why we are creating the South Portland Human Rights Commission, by focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion within our city. Our workshop statement that was presented to the City Council back in July of 2020 said that there is a need for the South Portland Human Rights Commission. People from all over the city came out to share their support and love of collaboration and coming together. We know that systemic racism and oppression affects areas of housing, employment, education, banking, healthcare, policing. It is insidious, and we know that it is time to stop this injustice and work for peace. So what is a Human Rights Commission? Research that was done online by 5 human rights commissions throughout the United States, which you'll see in this presentations, have listed 5 key components. Number 1, promoting an inclusive, empowering, and diverse community. Number 2, providing community education through trainings and workshops. Number 3, increasing community engagement through celebrations and events. Number 4, reviewing city policies and providing recommendations to the City Council. And lastly, number 6, actively working to prevent hate, discrimination, racism, and injustice from happening. The Maine Human Rights Commission was established in 1971 and stands independently to perform duty of investigations, all conditions and practices within the state, which allegedly detract from the employment by each inhabitant of the state of full human rights and personal dignity. Their mandate remains to investigate all forms of discrimination. Our task is not that. We do not hope to duplicate these resources or to detract from that, but rather to collaborate and work together. Executive Director Amy Snyderson has supported the South Portland Human Rights Commission and has stated, quote, she hopes that all of us can continue to work for human rights, and the more people, the better. So on behalf of the Commission for the Maine Human Rights Commission, they have an annual report which in 2019 they received 715 complaints. 66.8% of them were based on employment, 16.8% were based on public accommodations such as restaurants, hotels, and schools, 13.9% were based on housing, 2.2% were based on education, and 0.3% were based on credit. We acknowledge that these allegations are real and these are protected classes. Again, we do not hope to duplicate or detract from the Maine Human Rights Commission. We hope to collaborate and support their efforts. Exemplary human rights commissions throughout the United States include Melrose, Massachusetts, Charlottesville, Virginia, Medford, Massachusetts, Arlington, Massachusetts, Morgantown, Washington, and Grand Rapids, Minnesota. I encourage you to check these out online. They have a lot of really great resources that can help the Human Rights Commission here in South Portland. This slide talks about the population sizes and the reasons why I selected these 6 or 7 towns. South Portland has a population of roughly 25,000, and as you can see, the other cities are similar in aspects. We use this data to determine the number of members for the South Portland Human Rights Commission, and also to help with any ideas or collaborative areas that they could help us with, and to also use this as a starting point as we begin to create and establish the South Portland Human Rights Commission here in the state of Maine. So Melrose, Massachusetts created their Human Rights Commission in 1990. Many of these Human Rights Commissions were created around this time. And they do programming with No Place for Hate, which is an anti-defamation league organization that works to prevent incidents of racial, ethnic, and religious hate. They also meet once a month, and we are working closely with them to make sure that they help us and we collaborate with them. Bridget Alverson was the assistant to the mayor of the city of South Portland and had a great conversation with us in terms of making a strong and viable community here in South Portland. Charlottesville, Virginia Human Rights Commission was also established in 1990. As I previously said, many of them were established around this time, and they offer mediation services and formal investigations. This is not something that we want to do here for South Portland. Instead, we want to help support marginalized communities through collaboration and trainings and workshops, but I believe that the Charlottesville, Virginia Human Rights Commission could show us some things and teach us some pros and cons. Medford, Massachusetts created a civil rights commission as well as a human rights commission, and they work to promote a community atmosphere by working with community groups and agencies. I believe this is something that we could do in collaboration with the City of Portland and other surrounding neighborhoods. Their ordinance number 14787-795 has information about what they're doing in their city. Now, there's 2 left. Arlington, Massachusetts has a lot of information available online, a website, a Facebook page. They were established in 1993 at a town meeting where they found that they wanted to work collaboratively and individually with groups in the community to create an ever-changing tapestry within their town. They're really a model city, and it's something that I believe we should look into. Lastly is the Morgantown has a couple of YouTube videos actually with recordings of their meetings, and they did the National League of Cities destination. They were actually awarded in a inclusive city title in 2006, and they are really working to provide leadership for addressing community interactions and fairness concerns. They specifically focus on inclusivity, functionality, and justly to ensure that people are working across differences and conflicts. Now, lastly, Grand Rapids, Minnesota. They actually began in 2004 to aid the city council and ensure that all citizens were having equal opportunities as protected by the law. They are making sure that they are helping businesses, labor, education, civic, religious, and social community groups for understanding and to eliminate prejudice. Their information is available online as well, and they're slightly unique in the fact that they were established in 2004, so they have learned a lot in the past decade or so. So this slide talks about what we do and what we do not do. The South Portland Human Rights Commission does not provide legal counsel, and we do not investigate crimes. However, we are working closely with the police department and other community organizations to ensure that if people do have these issues, they can be redirected. What we do provide is that we specifically provide support for marginalized communities. That's members of the Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQIA, families, people in poverty, the list goes on. We also hope to provide workshops and education. We want to build community, celebrate diversity and inclusion, increase engagement, and review policies, all of which have been stated in the previous slides and can also be found online. Much of the information on this slide is what I've already said in terms of providing support for marginalized groups and people with disabilities is something I actually forgot to mention, but also low-income families, people of color, LGBT, and ensuring that we are accessible and we are sharing our information online. We really want to work to prevent hate and discrimination here in South Portland. We'll be working on an equity audit to look at documents and consider policy recommendations to the City of South Portland, and really to work collaboratively with the City of South Portland and the City Council. So all of this information can be found online, but it was voted, the ordinance voted that we shall have 13 members of the commission, 9 shall be voting members, 4 ex officio or non-voting members, and a quorum should be at least 6. As I stated before, we're working with the police, the planning department, the human resource department, and the school board. This detailed information can be found online. A website has already been created, and we are hosting our first meeting in November of 2020. Recommended trainings and speakers that have been done in previous cities across the country include No Place for Hate, the Anti-Defamation League, and we actually have a trainer here in Portland, Maine. Her name is Mandy Levine. We also encourage Maine Intercultural Competency Training with Liz Greason, Up with Community Implicit Bias Training with Nicola Chin, as well as countless other nonprofit organizations such as Maine Transnet, Equality Maine, Maine Wabanaki Reach, Wabanaki Alliance. Because of COVID-19, this is going to be a little difficult in terms of in-person training, which is fine. We'll be able to adapt to either Zoom or online trainings. But in the future, we hope to do trainings at the library, at the community centers, maybe some of the high schools where there's space enough to social distance, and just really be in the community so that we're working along each other side by side, not separate. So, as previously stated in July when this presentation took place in front of the City Council, they really responded well to these 3 pillars of excellence. The first one being responding to incidents of hate, bias, and discrimination by really talking with each other, collaborating, having a circle of directors, and hosting these monthly meetings. Also by educating by providing workshops, either bi-monthly or quarterly, and having paid professional trainers and potentially a certificate of completion so that we know who's attending, who can really dig in deep and have some really robust conversations, and how we can continue to educate and train each other. And then lastly, community building. We really want to provide free quarterly celebrations. We want to have these events in person, ideally, after COVID has subsided. We also want to make sure that we're providing food and childcare, as well as interpretation services, ASL, translators, whatever we need in order to make sure that our community is welcoming and inclusive to all. The proposed budget for the Human Rights Commission was approved, but this is just a draft, I would say. So this is the proposed budget, with the meat of the budget focusing on training and workshops and speakers so that we can pay our professionals. We also recommended that we have a HRC chair or maybe an administrative liaison that would help with a lot of the logistics. Supplies, books for a community read at some point in the game so that we're all having a common experience or a shared experience. MLK, Martin Luther King Day celebration, or attending the NAACP dinner. International Refugee Day celebration, which is a really important day for members of our community. Pride Week celebration, and lastly, Indigenous Peoples Day celebration, where we're honoring the land and really giving back to our brothers and sisters of the Wabanaki Confederacy here in Maine. Mm-hmm. We have many community supporters. I would say City Councilor Decca Delac, City Councilor April Carricchio, City Councilor Misha Pride, and City Councilor Katie Brusco have really done tremendous work in terms of supporting to make this ordinance happen. And then Pedro Vasquez, who really is the brains and the bronze behind these efforts, but countless others of people who really stepped up and literally came out of the woodwork to share their love and support for this South Portland Human Rights Commission. I've included a few online resources with information about the Anti-Defamation League, as well as the community organizations here in the greater Portland area. They can work with us to ensure that we are continuing to be welcoming and inclusive to all. So this is the end. For more information, you can visit the website and reach out to me if you have questions specifically, and let's get to work.